Oh, this is Ernest Burley Jr., your CIA, your cool insurance agent, back at you again with some more great information on insurance. I'm a licensed insurance agent with over 30 years experience in the industry with clients all over the country, from the East Coast to the West Coast, from the North to the South. We specialize in various areas of insurance. So that includes auto insurance, homeowners insurance, renter's insurance, life, long-term care, disability, business policies, church policies, professional liability. So an extensive range of insurance products and services to help you out. The purpose of this podcast is to enlighten you, to empower you, to educate you with clear, unbiased, objective information so you can make some good decisions for yourself and for your family. That's what this is all about, okay? So I don't like the long intro, so let's jump right into it. Here's our podcast for today. This podcast is titled The Umbrella of Umbrellas, the PLUP, Protect Your Assets, okay? Every adult should have a PLUP. And PLUP stands for Personal Liability Umbrella Policy, PLUP. It's an acronym. It's the umbrella of umbrellas. Raindrops keep falling on my head. This is my little guy's umbrella, the Batman there. Now, if I have to represent my little man, I got to represent my big girl. So here we go. Frozen. So yeah, I watched that movie so many times. I don't know. It's a pretty good movie, actually. But in either case, we're not talking about those type of umbrellas, right? We're talking about liability, the umbrella that covers you regarding your liability exposure. So I think every adult should have an umbrella policy, a PLUP. I'm gonna single out a few, but I'm not giving a pass to other adults. But here are some adults that definitely should have an umbrella policy, a PLUP. If you own any assets, you should have a PLUP, right? If you own property, so I know property is an asset, but I'm going to break down that whole own any asset situation. So if you own property like a home, rental property, personal property, you should have an umbrella policy. You should have something that is giving you additional liability protection if something unfortunate happens on those properties, okay? If you have a pool, you should definitely have an umbrella policy because that adds an additional liability exposure to you. And you want to make sure that you have that additional coverage if something unfortunate happens as a result of having that pool. Also, if you have young drivers in the household, you have these teenagers, 18, 19, 20 years old, and anyone under 20 is a youthful operator as far as I'm concerned. They're inexperienced drivers, and young drivers cause a lot of accidents. So if you have young drivers in your household, you should have an umbrella policy. If you own pets, so if you have a dog, a cat, or what have you, pets injure people either proactively by attacking them or doing something that caused people to injure themselves. So if you own pets, you should have an umbrella policy, right? So all of these different exposures expose your assets to lawsuit, and the umbrella policy gives you additional protection. So what these policies do is they protect you from more than the rain. We talked about the rain, right, with the umbrellas, but gives you much more protection than just from the rain. They provide an additional $1 million of coverage over and above your underlying liability limits, okay? So each property policy that you own has a basic liability limit. So your homeowner's policy, your auto policy, boat policies, rental properties, renters policies, they have underlying liability limits that you have basic coverage for. So the umbrella policy covers over and above that if the underlying liabilities are not enough to cover the situation that has occurred. Now, let me give you an example. I had a situation where, like I said, I don't talk about stuff I don't know about, right? So before owning my firm and becoming a business owner, I was a claim representative for a large insurance company. So I would go out and pay claims, property damage, lawsuits, all this other kind of stuff. So this claim came across my desk one time, and it was this guy, he had money. He was renting a nice place in Miami Beach, and his dog attacked the male person, right? And the male person had injuries to her knee, and she had all this pain. She couldn't work. And he had a renter's policy and an umbrella policy. The umbrella policy was still in force, but the renter's policy had lapsed. Here's why that was a problem. So the male person had injuries like to her knee. She had to have surgery, future surgeries. She had pain and suffering. She had lost wages. She had all of this stuff going on, right? So it was a pretty big claim. Now, the umbrella policy gives $1 million coverage over and above his basic liability limits, right? So that renter's policy was the $100,000 of basic liability coverage, but that policy lapsed. So he let the policy lapse. He didn't pay the premium. Those policies are what, 10, 15 bucks a month. Guess what? That means he had to pay the initial $100,000 of that claim. He had to pay because the umbrella policy pays in excess of the underlying limit. So you have to have the underlying limit in force. So the umbrella policy was in place and it did, come and jump into place, but he had to pay the first $100,000. That was a bad lesson learned. That's called a self-insured retention. You're retaining an initial amount that's like a deductible, basically, okay? So make sure you keep those policies in force, the underlying policies, homeowners, auto policies, or what have you. Got to keep those in force. So these policies, they normally come into play with an auto policy when you have a big accident, because an auto policy is your biggest exposure because you drive vehicles around. They're driven around from place to place, and there are other vehicles at the same time driving around place to place, right? So bad things can happen at your property too, at a rental property, at your home, at your condo, at your apartment, in your apartment unit. But those things don't move around, right? They're stationary. So if something happens, it's got to happen there. Versus a vehicle, you're driving it around, other people are driving. So it's a much bigger situation, much bigger exposure for the auto policy. So normally when a bad situation occurs or when the umbrella policy kicks in, it's normally for a bad auto accident. But hey, they kick in under, like I just gave an example for a renter's policy where it kicked in because a dog happened to attack a male person, right? So yeah, there you go. They come into effect and they will go over and above those liability limits. It's a very small cost. These policies normally only cost about a couple $100, maybe $200 a year for $1 million of coverage. That is well worth it for your peace of mind. And you can get more coverage. You can get 2, 3, 5 million. I have one client, he got $5 million of coverage because he wants to make sure no one is messing with his assets, right? The umbrella policy gives him extra protection, a lot of protection for a little bit of money. So his policy was more than $200 a year, but maybe another, a couple of $100 a year for $5 million, right? It also covers some instances of personal injury. So personal injury, those are things like slander, libel, defamation of character, things of that nature. That can also be covered under an umbrella policy, a personal liability umbrella policy. So you get a lot of protection for that $200 a year, a lot, okay? Now for my business owners out there, my commercial policy owners, you can get what's called a PLUP, a commercial liability umbrella policy. Those are for like, businesses or what have you. And sometimes if you have too many rental properties, a lot of insurance companies will consider that a business. If you have too many rental properties, so if you have like 5 or 6 rental properties, some companies, they won't write that under a personal situation. They'll say, okay, this has to be a commercial situation because you're actually in business since you have all these pop-up properties, okay? So there you go. That's it for today's podcast. Everyone should have a PLUP. Very important piece of coverage, very inexpensive, gives you peace of mind, gives you additional layers of protection that I think you really, really should have, okay? So our recap for today. All adults should have a PLUP. I know I singled out some adults that should have PLUPs, definitely, like our people with young drivers and our property owners and things of that nature. But any adult, I think, should have an umbrella policy because they're so inexpensive and they give you so much additional protection to protect your assets, okay? Next thing, our takeaways. Our main takeaways, 2 main takeaways. You get small cost for a big protection. Small cost, big protection. So that's one takeaway. And the other takeaway is that you want to make sure that you keep your underlying policies in force. So your homeowner's policy, your renter's policy, your condo policy, your auto policy, do not let those policies lapse because basically the underlying liability policy, the limits are your deductible. So you don't want to be on the hook for $100,000 like I gave you in that example before because your homeowner's policy lapsed or your renter's policy lapsed or your auto policy lapsed and you had an incident happen while the policy wasn't in force. Not a good situation to be in. All right. Hey, I thank you guys for listening. Thank you for dropping in every week and listening to my podcast. Hopefully you got some good information, some good nuggets of information out of it. I ask that you share this podcast with others and ask them to do the same so these podcasts can go viral. Please ask people to check out my YouTube channel. All of my podcasts are on YouTube, so you can go to YouTube and check out the different podcasts that are on there. And also I have like little 1-minute clips on different topics that you can take a look at too that aren't full podcasts, but just like 1-minute clips on different situations and different topics, okay? If you want to connect with me, very easy to do. It's just my full name at gmail.com. So Ernest Burley Jr. at gmail.com. That's ERNEST BURLEYJR at gmail.com. Or you can call my firm at 301-262-2600. That's 301-262-2600. And that's it for today. I really appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. Until we speak next time, this is Ernest Burley, your CIA, your cool insurance agent, signing off. So until we speak next time, till we meet next time, y'all be safe, have fun out there, okay? Take care.